morning, and welcome to the Georgetown County Library's F. Scott and Zelda Fitzgerald 101st anniversary celebration. On April 3rd, 1920, Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda Sayre got married in New York. Throughout the 1920s, the couple would be famous as international literary celebrities and cultural icons who embodied the jazz age, a phrase coined by Scott Fitzgerald. Sadly, under the strains of addiction and mental health issues, their marriage would dissipate the next decade. Tomorrow, we will feature a talk by Dr. Dino Trakis on F. Scott Fitzgerald's legacy. Today, we give Zelda Fitzgerald equal time. Dr. Celeste McMaster joins us to read her exciting short story, Zelda Burning. In it, Dr. McMaster provides a fictional account of Zelda's tragic final days in Highland Hospital up in Asheville, North Carolina, where Zelda was being treated for schizophrenia. The short story provides a compelling account of the Fitzgeralds' life together in Zelda's voice. The story won the 2016 Saturday Evening Post Great American Fiction Contest. Celeste McMaster is Professor of English and Department Chair at Charleston Southern University, just down the road a piece from us. She was awarded the 2015 Excellence in Teaching Award. Dr. McMaster also won the 2017 Elizabeth Boatwright Coker Fellowship in Fiction from the South Carolina Academy of Authors. Earned her BA from the University of Arkansas, her MA from East Carolina University, and her PhD from the University of South Carolina. Dr. McMaster has published poetry and fiction, short story, the Dos Passos Review, New Delta Review, and The Whale, among other venues. So please welcome and enjoy Dr. Celeste McMaster reading for us her prize-winning story, Zelda Burning. Give a tip of my fedora to you, Celeste. I can't wear it because I have these silly headphones on, but like an air traffic controller. But that's my nod to the Roaring '20s, the jazz age.
I love it.
So, yeah. So, take it away, talking about the good Zelda, if you can see that. That's a nice,
nice
old biography of it.
Yeah.
So, Celeste, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us to celebrate. We tried to do the 100th anniversary in person last year. COVID intervened. So here we are, the 101st anniversary celebration of Zelda and Scott Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you for your hospitality, and thank you for Georgetown County Library, and for those of you listening. I have my book here too, the same one, but just different cover. So this is a story called Zelda Burning. How is it that she's come to this? From flapper to frump, sitting here in an oversized sweater, the color of cerulean blue, her hair a frowsy tangle, though just now she doesn't care. She doesn't care about that. There's sun in her chest that's pushing out through her limbs. She's still warm. She knows this place, this white windowless office, is not where she belongs, but she's not sure where it is that she does. From behind his desk, Dr. Carroll is asking her another question as Zelda, stretched out on the couch, gazes out the window, seeing sunlight slice through gray. God is there, but Dr. Carroll doesn't see him. Isn't it strange when his presence is so clear? He's to her right, slouched in a chair, squinting from the light. He's silent, but she can tell he's judging her thoughts. She stares over at him, questions in her eyes, but his face is a wall she keeps coming up against. Dr. Carroll never quits, prodding and poking. "Excuse me?" Zelda asks. I was asking if you'd care to talk more about your childhood, your parents, for example. Not particularly, doctor, but if you insist, I'll do my best. She bats her eyes at the good doctor, such a proud and puffy little man. Yes, Zelda, tell me about your father. She lights a cigarette. My father was a judge, Old Dick, we all called him. He never really approved of me. She rushes on breathlessly. God always remembers him chasing me around the table with a carving knife that time at dinner, but really he wasn't as bad as all that. God is still slouched in the chair to her right, his hands curved toward her, inspecting his nails. So strange how the doctor never even glances his way. The doctor's face flushes in alarm. Your father chased you with the carving knife? Why do you think that was, Zelda? Zelda laughs, waving her hand in dismissal. Oh, who knows? I was probably being sassy. It was right after Scott and I were married, so I expect we were all getting used to things. Don't worry, doctor. Father knew I was a fast runner. She can tell that sometimes the doctor doesn't know whether she's fibbing or not. Honestly, there are moments when she isn't sure herself. I suppose you want to know about how he was when I was growing up, that sort of thing. She flicks the ash from her cigarette into the brass tray. Yes, Zelda, that would be fine. Dr. Carroll runs his fingers through the little hair he has left, then adjusts his glasses and straightens in his chair. Well, he mostly stayed out of the way, too busy with work, which was fine by Mother and me. She closes her eyes and she is there again, a small child in a white sundress, golden hair glinting in the sun, running through the field of yellow daisies. She smells the bright and onion weeds blended with clover. Her mother sits in the shade on a white, paint-chipped bench, fanning herself and reading Harper's. Look how fast I can run, Mother. Yes, darling, you certainly can. I can beat the boys. She runs and runs straight through the field, faster and faster, until she tastes the sweat on her upper lip and the wind cuts deep down in her throat. Throwing herself into the tall weeds, she rests for a minute. Her mother, used to toting Zelda home covered in grass stains and bruises, never minds in the least if she gets dirty. Zelda's days consist of doing exactly what she wants when she wants. Swimming and diving, those she adores, darting into the water like a tiny exotic fish, racing through the blue of the pool, water pulsing in and out of her ears. And then some days, after she's beaten the boys in that too, they bicycle or roller skate home, and Mother has warm cookies and lemonade for all. At night, she catches fireflies with the boys and falls asleep to the smell of the pear trees in their yard. Zelda, a voice like her father's, calls to her, but she's not ready to go back home yet. No, I'm with Mother now. I still want to pick flowers. Zelda, it's Dr. Carroll. You're drifting away again. Remember how we discussed the importance of focusing, of staying in the world of the real? Scott is sitting straight up in the chair now, staring across at her as if he is waiting too. But doctor, the fantasy world is so much nicer. She has been a good girl, even helping those patients who need assistance in exercise and dance, and so has earned a hike in the steamy late afternoon near Sunset Mountain with Dr. Carroll's assistant, Landon. The rain begins to thump down on her head, but Zelda doesn't mind. She is thrilled to be outdoors, comforted by the dank, dark woods. Let's make a fire, she suggests, and begins rifling through the bark and briar patches, choosing pieces of kindling. Hypnotized, Zelda thinks of other fires. There were the sharp smells of burning eucalyptus from fires behind the beaches on the Riviera. Those were happy times with her French aviator, his strong body lying next to hers as they watched the sunset, smelling the cool breeze from the ocean, the smoky, sharp scent that made her feel so alive. Then there were the fires that she had set in rage. Whenever Scott had hurt her or whenever she simply needed the closure that comes with flames, igniting her clothes in an old fireplace, nearly burning down the house in LaPie in the process, or in an old bathtub when Scott was on the prowl. Walking back home in the dust, Zelda looks ahead to the moon glowering over the mountain trees in the direction of the Grove Park Inn. She thinks for an instant of when she stayed there with Scott for their wild honeymoon, and all the other times they stayed there as lovers and partners in fun. They were excitement eaters in those days, riding around on the tops of taxicabs, coming in at 3 a.m. They made a picture, the two of them, better than movie stars. As the hospital comes into view, Zelda notices something she hasn't before, a gray stone well on her right. There's something mysterious about it, spooky. As she approaches from the deep down below, a voice calls to her. Zelda, it's Scott's voice, muffled. Zelda, it's me. I'll come to see you. I'm down here. Come jump, dive like you used to. Scott, what are you doing down there? This way we can have some privacy. Come on and jump. There's a golden kingdom that goes down through from here. Zelda moves closer to his voice, but just as suddenly arms grab at her, pulling her back. She struggles and screams, lashing out against them, but they still carry her, fighting away. She's not altogether sure how she came to be here, sitting on the sofa in this bright white room. Dr. Carroll looks at her from over his glasses. Tell me, Zelda, what do you remember about your hiking trip yesterday? Zelda sits dazed. A couple of minutes passed. I had the chance to be with him, Doctor. That man pulled me away. You're all trying to keep us apart. Dr. Carroll draws his eyebrows together, making one long caterpillar of them. Trying to keep whom apart, Zelda? Me and Scott. Dr. Carroll looks weary. Zelda, you know Scott died a few years ago. But Scott will never die, she knows. Why, just the other day, when she was out visiting friends, he sat right beside her at the dinner table and told her the train would depart late. And sure enough, it was a good 30 minutes behind schedule. Her Princeton man, the king of roses. He'd pursued her when she was just a girl, just a beautiful girl in a frothy tulle dress. How jealous the other girls were of her. How envious her boyfriends were of him. Right up until the very last minute, she'd kept them all guessing whom she'd finally choose. She recalls standing around at the pool the evening before her marriage to Scott, dressed in her flesh-colored swimsuit. Rumors spread that she'd been naked. Spinning around, eyes closed, arms outstretched, and finger pointing, she taunted, "Whoever I stop on, that's who I'll marry." The boys scrambled around her to have a better chance of being chosen. Dr. Carroll clears his throat, pulling her back. Zelda has noticed that he has an annoying little habit of doing this when she drifts. Let's talk about your paintings, Zelda. They're very impressive. Tell me about this one. He holds up a watercolor of a naked woman lying fallen on some steps. Underneath her hips and legs are gold coins. Ornate gold pots stand tall beside her. In the shadowed corner, a gray phantom figure dressed in brown holds a jar containing large white moths that exit and fly into the space. An amber city gleams through the archway in the background. Oh, that's from a parable Jesus taught his followers. Do not store up treasures on earth. I see. Why is it that the hands in all of your paintings, this one included, are so large in proportion to the bodies? They seem slightly disfigured, overpowering, and grasping. Zelda turns her head, considering the painting for a few seconds. Well, I'll tell you, Doctor, I'm just not that good with hands. She believes that the things she sees in the clouds are hers alone. No one else can pinpoint the day god dancers trying their point shoes, or see the faces of zinnias, the tufts of the beard of Moses, the snowsuit padded child zooming down this hill on a sled, and other scenes, the backs of knees, for instance, or the entwined bodies of lovers. They are not polite to mention, but that she mentions nonetheless, whenever she has the chance to leave listeners in stunned, open-mouthed silence. Zelda knows by intuition that say what they may, no one can give life to these shapes better than she. Earlier that afternoon, she lay alone in the grass just beyond the hospital, staring up at the clouds. God had been there briefly, sitting to her right, arms wrapped around his knees, writing in his leather-bound journal, the one she smelled even when he wasn't around. He'd look up from time to time, but his thoughts were on his work, not on the sky. Finally, he'd gotten up and wandered dreamily up the hill, journal in his back pocket, leaving her alone. Now, in the spacious wood-floored room devoted to arts and exercise, Zelda works at her easel. She always chooses to set up in front of the window that has the best light, and today it is the one in the left-hand corner where the sun's rays stream down like warm honey from behind the clouds and through the large glass panes. On her palette, she mixes the different shades of browns and pinks. The smell of oil paint stings her nose and provokes in her a heightened sense of awareness. As she mixes, Zelda sees from out the corner of her eye a patient meandering towards her. The woman appears to be like Zelda in her 40s. She has left the group of men and women at the craft table at the far end of the room and comes to stand beside Zelda. The patient's hair is messy and she sucks her thumb, drool running from the corners of her mouth. Her clothes sag and hang, and she stares blankly at the canvas. The woman takes her thumb out of her mouth. "What you gonna paint there?" "Ballet dancers." It is a painting of two Picasso-esque figures, male and female, and Zelda, ignoring the intrusion, turns her canvas and blends brown paint, shadowing the woman figure's outstretched arm. Both dancers are naked with the exception of the ballet slippers the female wears. In her hands are the tutus she has discarded, a white one in the outstretched hand, a pink one in the left. The woman stands over the man who is facing backwards with arm curved over his head, crouched under the female's arm, as if being banished. The two figures' features blur together, and the legs, arms, and hands are stretched out of all proportion, for this is how dancers feel after dancing. As Zelda uses her fine point brush to outline and shade the female dancer's lens, she reflects back to her days of intense training at Madame Igorova's studio, how Madame's presence infused life, that luminous chandelier brilliance of beauty and hope, into Zelda, how her manic days of practice at home, her work at the bar and mirror she'd installed, and Scott's apartment at which she worked nonstop, even talking to friends who came to visit as she rehearsed, were well worth a single word of praise from the tall, dark-haired, brilliant madam with whom she was a little bit in love. And dancing itself stretched her muscles, her mind, her soul. It seemed to her that only through daily disciplined movement could she beat back the demons. Third rate. Zelda whirls around, startled that the voice is not the patient's, but Scott's. He's dressed in a relaxed suit and tie and wears his hat at an angle. Leaning one leg crossed over the other on a wooden column, he smokes a cigarette and observes her painting. "You're a third-rate artist, Zelda, just like you were a third-rate dancer and writer for that matter." He blows the smoke through his mouth and nose, his eyes boring into hers. "God, please, you're not supposed to be here. You'll get me into trouble again. And then they won't let me out to see Mother. Let me paint. This is all I have left." Hands trembling, she returns to the dark brown floors of the stage, a space that does not require particular steadiness. He sneers. "Save me the waltz. I can't believe you had the audacity to publish it, taking my material like that." Zelda spins around to face him. "Your material? It was both of our lives, wasn't it? You talk about audacity after going through my journal and lifting my own words from my letters to you and you alone for your stories and novels. Go away. He disappears, and in his place stands the female patient, still sucking her thumb. But now her eyes are large, and she moans as if she might break out in frightened sobs. The nurse in charge of the crafts table hurries to the scene. Zelda, is something the matter? The patient runs forward, turning away from Zelda and clinging to the nurse. No, ma'am, but this woman is disturbing my concentration. Would you please escort her back to the table? As the nurse shepherds the patient back to her fold, Zelda cleans her brush and dips it into the dark pink paint, refocusing her attention on the creases of the tutu and the ballerina slippers. She wants to stick out her tongue at the world. She's always had the impulse ever since she was a child, and that's how she feels at this moment, age 47, now that she's out of that wretched hospital at last, puttering away in her mother's garden, digging up clods of dirt with her trowel, raking her fingers through the earth, breaking in the rich, dark soil. She feels the sun's rays begin to heal her tired body. When she first came there was one lonely jonquil outside her bedroom window, but now she looks proudly at all she's planted: crocus, jasmine, lilies, larkspur, phlox, marguerites. Lifting her face to the sky, she sees dark, menacing clouds moving closer, and she smells the oncoming rain. Though it is March and springtime, the evenings are cool, and she and Mother still make fires in the hearth. Zelda can sit for hours just staring into the fire, imagining in the orange and blue flames the shapes and faces that meld together in her dream. The next day, after a lunch of fried chicken and mashed potatoes with her mother, Zelda, in unusually good spirits, decides to walk to town to see a painting in the gallery she read about in the paper. Be careful, Zelda, her mother calls to her as she heads out the door. Really, Mother, it's fine. I believe I'm getting better. Dressed in a dark green velvet gown, purple scarf, and black bucket hat, Zelda sets off. The air is fresh and clean after last night's rain, and the wind refreshes and lifts her spirit. Rounding the corner a couple of blocks from her house, she spots two young boys sitting on their bicycles talking. Zelda thinks how adorable they are in their coats and caps, and remembers how she would dress little Scotty in her jacket and boots before she went out to play. As she passes by the pair, she overhears one saying to the other, "Hey, Jack, look, that's the woman my ma said was talking to herself and yelling at imaginary folks in the street the other day." Zelda increases her pace until she's safely out of earshot, and then slumps onto the steps of the vacant apartment, her eyes stinging. She didn't know she'd been yelling, only communicating how many people had seen her. Did her mother know? Wrapping her scarf tighter around her face, she returns home by a different route. Back she goes to the Highland Hospital in spite of her good intentions to be well. Although the stone walls and antiseptic smells oppress her, she has come to look at this place as a refuge from the world's expectations of sanity. In a tiny white room on the wing of the first floor, the nurse, a young, lovely, but with a bit of the pinched, hassled look about her, is giving her an injection. Zelda is not sure what it is, but silently submits, desiring to be left alone with her thoughts. "Good night, Mrs. Fitzgerald," the girl says. Zelda simply looks at her. Left alone, she feels restless. Flopping like a fish in her bed, she wonders abstractly if anyone is surprised she's back here. She certainly isn't. Zelda remembers telling her mother just before she got in the car to be taken back to the cool air of Asheville. "Don't worry, Mother, I'm not afraid to die." And she's not. She thinks of death as all pure and white and golden, where she eats honeydew melon and drinks dope with boys who once again adore her. Out of the darkness, she sees a section of light under her door, and a voice calls to her, "Zelda, Zelda." He has come for her at last. They told her he was gone, but she knew he would come. I'm coming, Scott. Hang on. Just like him when he was tight, yelling like that, loud enough to wake up the whole place. This time she determines to appear very glamorous when she meets him. No more crazy old woman. Oh no. Searching through her closet, she finds a short black dress with a fringe at the bottom. She pulls out her string of beads and straps on her black heels. Oh, where is all this coming from? But she doesn't care. She's happy. Finding a mirror under her bed. Somehow she knows just where to look. And some mascara and rouge and red lipstick, too. She puts on her Elizabeth Arden face. The nurse has more gumption than she'd imagined, leaving all these tokens behind for Zelda to find. And now she sees that some kind soul, Dr. Carroll, has tucked away a small gift for her, and opening the box, she takes out the most adorable little black cap, just what the outfit needs. Pulling it on, she rushes out the door, and then she hears the music, Ivy Anderson singing with the Duke Ellington Orchestra. She would have to talk to Scott about them, and God, and other important things that he might not have considered. But no time for that now. She must go and meet him, and then he is there, just like the first time she met him back in Montgomery, Alabama, when she was 18. He is beautiful in his tawny golden suit, white shirt, and black with gold striped tie underneath his hair, combed back, and his gray eyes holding hers, and she runs right up and throws her arms around him and kisses him. Duke and Ivy are singing to It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. Hey, baby, I sure have missed you. Zelda lowers her chin and cuts her eyes up at him, her lips curling in a sultry smile. It's smoky in here. The horns blare loudly, but it's just how they like it. The lights and music don't faze two lovers who want to shine for each other, and they do, swinging to the syncopation of the sound. Magically, Scott has improved since their last dance so long ago. He knows all the steps, but it's Zelda who causes everyone to turn and stare. They can't keep their eyes off her style, her sense of rhythm. Scott pulls her close to him, closer than ever before, cheeks touching, one body, then swings her over and around, then turns for them to Charleston with the group, and then back to Zelda. And then Zelda breaks away. She feels the beat of the drums way down in her body, and she wants a solo. Pulling up her dress to her hips, she shakes her fanny in perfect double-time rhythm. Everyone stands back to watch, amazed as always by her verve and courage. She doesn't care what they think. She knows every inch of her is moving in time to the music, that she is the music and the energy and the pulse of nighttime. The spotlight is on her, and she twirls, her skirt swinging out, and she comes to one corner of the room where she sees Dr. Carroll sitting on a stool, snapping his fingers and bobbing his head from side to side. He smiles up at her and tries to tell her something, some word of admiration, but she can't be bothered with anyone else's rhythm. She has her own. Fingers stretched tight, hands flittering, legs hopping and kicking first front and back and out and turn. She spins and spins until she comes to the next corner where sits a man in a chair. But instead of looking at her like a loon as he usually does, he too is smiling and nodding along. She sees him pull out a notebook, look back up at her in approval, then glance down again and write a line or two. Let him write. Let him tell Scott ugly things about her. She doesn't care this night. This is her dance. She's not Nicole Diver or Daisy Buchanan or any other girl in Scott's stories. Or maybe she's all of them. Yes, she's all of them, but more. More because she's Zelda Sayre. One hand on hip and swinging her beads with the other, she scissor steps a little ways across and finds another familiar face. Do you remember me, my Southern beauty? We had such fun on the Riviera. He's still in tip-top shape, young and bronze, with the same jet black hair. They had been quite cozy that summer when Scott was too busy to be with her. At the time, it had broken her heart a little, but now all she can concentrate is on the bliss of her dance. And then, as she nears the next corner, there sits her father, the judge. She gives her best smile and dances harder and harder, faster and faster. Shimmy, shimmy, push, pull, back, together, front. The steps come to her automatically. Her body dictates and throbs with the slightest nuance of the singer's voice, or the trumpet or sax. Zelda jumps up on a chair, then onto the nearby table. Her entire body vibrates, and all the spectators blur together. Arms fanning out, legs kicking behind, she twirls towards Scott, stopping arm's length away from him. With hip jerked to one side, Zelda reaches into his pocket where she knows she'll find cigarettes, taking one from the case and dramatically placing it between her lips. She thrusts her chin out for him to light it. With a grin, he obliges, and tapping her foot to the rhythm, Zelda puffs brilliant circles of smoke and then tosses her cigarette into the frenzied crowd. And then this is the most spectacular effect she has ever had. Scott, the darling, must have ordered it for her. The fire starts just beside Scott, close to Dr. Carroll's seat, and then spreads slowly around the room as she dances and swirls and smiles. She feels the heat, but it just makes her dance faster and faster, the fire creeping up the walls, the flames licking and beating down the cabinets and tables. And so no one seems much to mind, for Zelda is dancing her heart out. She's never danced like this before, and soon the two hands of fire join together and the circle is complete. She's dancing in a ring of fire and twirling and twirling and twirling and rushing around and around and around. And she thinks as she dances, this is the end. Scott will love this ending. Something in her pauses, and she wonders, will he? Will he love this ending? Will it be the ending he wants? And then the notion quivers and snaps, for she thinks, it's my own ending this time, and a damn good one.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Just incredible story. We'll see if we get some comments on Facebook. Any questions out there? Dr. Celeste McMaster, Zelda Burning. She'll be happy to respond. And as we wait on those, I may pitch a couple of questions to you about this a fascinating fictional account of Zelda Fitzgerald, but there are a lot of biographical details woven in there. How did you get interested in this story? What inspired you to write this?
So when I was an undergraduate, I'm from Arkansas, and when I was an undergraduate at the University of Arkansas in Little Rock, I had I was in a scholars program, and we had to write sort of like a master's thesis. And my particular mentor was an American Lit teacher. She's actually from England, but she's an American Lit professor. And she really wanted me to study Zelda at that point. This was many, many years ago. And so at that point, not much work was done on her. And so she encouraged me to do that. I didn't do that. I ended up writing on Uncle Tom's Cabin and Harriet Beecher Stowe in that particular moment. But I kept that in mind. Because I didn't know really anything about her. And then when I was in graduate school at the University of South Carolina, I was taking a creative writing class and decided to do, my idea that is not complete yet is to have a collection of stories about women artists and men who have overshadowed them. And so that's a work in progress. And so I started with her and did a lot of research and then let it sit and marinate for a while and then came back to it years later. I think I drafted it for that class and then came back to it and did a lot of polishing and reworking of it years later.
Yeah, and how did you um, how did you balance that sense of I guess of life and fiction, biography and art? You have so many details from Zelda Fitzgerald's life in there. She was a writer, as you mentioned. She was a ballet dancer, and she also was a painter, and she was obviously confined to Highland Hospital and died in the fire in 1948. So there, and many other details pop up throughout. How did you balance those biographical details with creating this story that's I guess kind of creates a deeper truths out of her story?
Yeah, I think I had a lot, if I remember, I think I had a lot more of those details. And then when I started revising it, obviously she really died in a fire, but I also, sort of wanted that to be a thread throughout. So a lot of the images that I chose to leave or to tweak were gold. And I kept seeing the color gold. So in a lot of the paintings and even in the field when she's imagining, when she was a little girl, I tried to highlight that. And then just the idea of fire. I think it's been a long time since I've done the research and combed through the biographies and all of that. But she did definitely feel a sense of overshadowing, that Scott was sort of overshadowing her and really haunting her psyche. And so even the dance, the dance, I think it's a painting of dancers. I noticed that the arm was like the male's arm was over her head. So I tried to keep that running through, that there was, that those details were, really were based on paintings, but also, I remember looking at all of her paintings. Somewhere you can check those out of the library, and just like all of her watercolors and oil paintings, and choosing the ones that sort of, I guess, intuitively, I thought kind of match the story and some themes I was trying to pull out.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the theme of Zelda feeling that she's being overshadowed by men, and it's even going back to that to her house of origin with her father, Judge Sayre, and then Dr. Carroll kind of looms over her, and of course Scott Fitzgerald. So that seems like a big theme throughout, and that was true to life. You're suggesting Zelda's biography.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Even like the dancing, I was just reviewing some notes, and she danced as a child, but then she went back when she was, I think 27. She went back and really studied dance intensely. Like she'd practice 8 hours a day, and Scott was, would tell her that was a waste of time and things like that. And that, her writing, he was really upset when she wrote the novel, which was very, Save the Waltz, which was very autobiographical. And so, yeah, I think she did feel that sense of trying to escape out of those ideas people had of her, and trying to be an artist in her own right.
Yeah, and she was this kind of a Southern belle on the one hand, and yet there's this kind of wonderfully creative collision between Zelda as Southern belle and Zelda as flapper. That seem in some ways at odds. What do you make of her this Southern upbringing and Southern Belle kind of aspect. I think that shows up in the story, and yet she's also this more liberated, I guess, flapper figure.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think it's not Nancy Milford, but there's another biography by Sally Klein, and she talks about, all the research that she did, and she read everything that Zelda has written, letters that still exist, and letter stories. I think she even wrote a play, and she was just saying that when she went back to Montgomery, probably where her friends and family were, like everyone who knew her said, or knew accounts of her, said that she was like, no one said she was vulgar. She said that she was like very much a Southern lady. And yet she was really defying all those conventions of what a woman should be. And, there was someone from a magazine asked her, like, what is your favorite thing to cook? And she said, or what is your favorite thing? What do you like to cook? And she said something like, nothing. When I want some bacon, I ask the help to do it. And then if really hungry, I would like some poached eggs. I would ask her to do that. Toast burns too easily. So she she had a wealthy upbringing and really was spoiled too. But even when she was young, she sort of was, cause for many rumors, and stirred things up then too.
Yeah, and they were, and the two of them together, Scott and Zelda, were, as you put it, excitement eaters in the 1920s, and really were icons of the Roaring Twenties. They put their own roar into those 20s, and so I mean, that relationship was, it seems very creative, at least at first, and then it kind of broke apart. And do you think the competitiveness that you described between Zelda and Scott in your story? She's painting, and he says the figure of Scott showing up, the ghostly figure, third rate, and third rate writer and third rate ballet dancer. And then they kind of battle over whose material it is. He's written borrowing her material from life, and he accuses her of the same. So, do you think that competitiveness caused them to break apart, or did it drive them together?
No, I don't think it drove them together. I mean, one thing was just alcoholism, and there was a lot of blaming of Zelda in terms of, and I think really when Scott was writing, she did have a tendency, from many accounts, she had a tendency to distract him, and she people like Ernest Hemingway, who didn't like her at all, and the feeling was mutual, would say that Scott's writing, she was not good for Scott's writing. And then there are like actual pages from her diary that that are taken and used in his novels. And so that was a controversial situation. And then, but yeah, when when she wrote her novel, he accused her of, rightly, using their lives and not wanting her to do that. So sort of a double standard. And I think some of it was gendered, some of it was like, I guess, wiring, and that they drank a lot. There were lots of infidelities. So I think that was just like that was just a slice of all the problems.
Yeah, and so that competitiveness, the end, but there were a lot of issues. The excitement eating kind of got out of control, and they
Yes.
out of control
Gorging.
excitement gorging, and alcoholism ensued, and Zelda had that a schizophrenic break, mental health issues, but Scott too had mental health issues, and the alcohol was often a sort of self-medication. In fact, I think he was offered admittance for treatment at, I believe it was at Highland Hospital, and he was just appalled that that he would be accused of being of being unstable, though clearly he was.
Right.
That was Zelda's problem, not his. So yeah, but it's sort of just like on a cultural level, the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties came to a crashing halt with the crash in 1929, and it kind of eerie how their relationship parallels so much of the cultural history at the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also they personally had financial problems too, were, famously in debt for a good bit of the time. So it was a very roller coaster type life that they lived.
Yeah. And in your account, you have God is clearly haunting Zelda, and that seems true to life, still in her psyche. He would die in 1940, basically the effects of alcoholism. Do you think it was the other way around, that was Zelda still haunting Scott Fitzgerald in before his death in 1940?
I don't know. I think there was always something there, but I think I believe at that point he had become serious with another woman, and had sort of, thought that she needed to stay there for sure. And she really, like, sometimes we kind of remember that, Scott died, and then she was just sort of like this doddering old woman. But she actually was still artistically really active. And, one of the biographers argues that she actually was at the peak of her artistic ability. I mean, she was working on a second novel when she died. And like I said, she was painting and dancing. And, I mean, she had breaks clearly, but she was still being artistically productive. I don't know about I need to look into that, what Scott's psyche may have been when he died. Maybe the scholar tomorrow he'll be able to tell us.
Yeah, Dino.
Dino
Trachis coming tomorrow at 10 a.m. Talking about focusing more on Scott and his iconic novel, The Great Gatsby, which also borrows from life. In some ways that might have irritated Zelda, but I love how your story perfectly sort of parallels what the Fitzgeralds themselves did in taking from life and making it into fiction.
Thank you.
And doing, interweaving like the gold imagery, and there's fire imagery beforehand, before the fire hits too, but those literary elements that you weave in so nicely.
Thank you.
So, and this was great, a great way to celebrate 101 years on. The good, the bad, and the ugly of the Fitzgeralds. They had a lot in there, but maybe they, to quote Shakespeare, maybe they love not wisely, but too well. So there is, there was that initial passion, but lots of things got in the way by the end. But Zelda, gets her say here in your story, and was continuing to produce art. Really pay attention to that, incorporating your descriptions of her paintings nicely. So, yeah, Any good words? Final good words for the order today, Celeste?
I don't think so. I just thank you for letting me be a part of this. It's been fun to review her life, preparing for the reading too. So I appreciate you reaching out and letting me be a part of this.
We're thrilled to have you, and wish we could have done it in person and had we planned a Great Gatsby gala, and could have dressing up and dancing with some 1920s live jazz in the background, but that was not to be, at least not to this point.
Yeah, that sounded like great fun. By the way, I didn't realize that I had a purple scarf in the story. I read what are the chances?
Yes. Yeah, perfectly you embodying the story itself there.
Yeah, and not too closely.
Yeah, but purple, it seems like a very Fitzgeraldine kind of color, very bright and lavish. And that was their lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, I was looking forward to the jazz party and all of that. So maybe we'll have another sort of celebration that allows for that. We can all together.
Maybe possibly the 102nd anniversary. It doesn't quite have the same ring, but
just make it an annual event.
Yeah, well, it is great to celebrate both of them. They were, not only in their writing, but in their style of life. They lived a kind of artful life in the 1920s in Paris. But it is good to come back and revisit that and celebrate their legacy. Well, thank you so much for being here, and we really appreciate that dramatic reading about such a dynamic figure, Zelda Fitzgerald. Hopefully, more and more attention will keep coming to her works and her life.
Thank you. I appreciate being here, and I look forward to hearing the talk tomorrow.
Yes. Tomorrow, the perennial appeal of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, Dino Trachis, and that should be a great talk, great event. 101st anniversary celebration. Thank you so much for being a part of this, Celeste, and hope you write your own ending as well, and it's a happy ending.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks to your crew, too.
Oh, yeah, and very much thank you to Truman Wins out there who helps us run so smoothly. Heather Pelham, who often videography. So we got a great kind of studio crew here with the Georgetown County Library.
Nice.
Thanks for giving them props too, Celeste.
Yeah. Hey, you guys have a good day. Thanks again.
Take care, and thank y'all for being with us.